Welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. My guest is a return guest, Chase Mullin, who runs what I was going to call the local landscape firm, but really it's quite a regional landscape firm here in Louisiana. I've known Chase for many years. He actually built my front landscape in my house, did a beautiful job. And Chase really is a man of continuous improvement. He has constantly evolved himself and his business. He has not been afraid to make changes in his business. And you're going to hear about the key changes he has made, which include how he dropped hardscape services in order to focus on a better return for his business, but also growth of his business. So dropping a service in-house in order to grow the business. He'll explain how he did that. He really has grown over the years. He started off small, right? 5 million at some point, and then grew up towards 30 million with a couple branches. He'll share some of his strategies for picking markets with less competition that allow him to create these branches. He talks about his leadership team and how that has evolved. He talks about really continuous improvement and key strategic decisions he's made along the way. This is a nice compact podcast. I think you'll appreciate this. If you're listening to it now, the week that I'm posting it, you'll also be in time if you want to check out our sales symposium, which is happening March 10th, and the early bird discount ends the end of February. So you still have time to sign up for that. It's going to be an interesting sales season this year, and you definitely need all the help you can get. Our sales symposium is geared towards sales managers, or I should say sales management, whether you're having to do some of that as an owner or a division leader, or maybe as a salesperson who's helping out with sales management. And even if you're just a salesperson, you're going to understand the bigger picture and of sales, building a successful sales team. Plenty of tips for you also just in sales to make yourself a better producer and leader. And so in the show notes, you can find information on that. And with no further ado, here's Chase. Chase Mullin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jeffrey, glad to be here with you.
You know, we live so close to each other, and yet here we are virtually. And actually, I'm in Georgia today.
Fair enough. I was going to say we should have done it at your house uptown. We could have sat together on one camera.
Yeah. With a bottle of beer.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say hopefully the weather in Georgia is slightly more Christmas-like than the weather down here in New Orleans.
No, it's been pretty warm here. I think you'd have to go to New York.
Fair enough.
For Christmas. So I wanted to have you back on the show. You've done a lot of great changes and evolutions since we last spoke. And so I really wanted to dive into some of those things that you have stopped doing or started doing that have helped you become successful.
Yeah, happy to.
So I remember when I took some of my clients on a tour of your place, and you mentioned how you dropped hardscape and in order to just focus on what you do best, and how it didn't really help growing your maintenance, which is what you're trying to do. And I just love that whole concept. I think a lot of people struggle with what they should do in-house and what they should either sub or just stop doing. So tell us a little bit about how tell us that story.
Yeah, happy to. And it's funny. I'll speak from like my experience or our experience at Mullin, but I've also watched other businesses bring on additional trades and do it what appears to be well. So I'll speak for what didn't work and what's currently working for us, but that's our story.
Yeah.
I'll start from the beginning, Jeffrey. But like a lot of landscapers, initially I did everything. And as I started to learn how to do different types of work and added to the scope what we were capable of doing for a customer, whatever, irrigation, lighting, subsurface drainage, masonry became one of those items. And we really kind of created a niche is specifically like in New Orleans and, backyard outdoor living or backyard living environments. And, part of that niche or part of that scope was obviously like, masonry construction, whether it be, paver patios, or down here, we do a lot of wet laid bricks and bluestone, natural stone, and other like masonry detail, seating walls, etc. So it became like kind of almost, I guess, like cool, but at the same time, like in my opinion or our opinions, um, necessary to have this masonry in house, because a lot of what we were doing as design build contractors was super custom. And we had a hard time finding, these outsourced masonry contractors that were really willing to like create what we wanted them to, specifically sometimes without, a ton of detail, et cetera. Right. It's like a whatever elevation image that one of our landscape architects draws, and we're expecting these masonry contractors to figure out how to price and build them, and they just wouldn't. So, over time, we found that we had a couple of guys who had a knack for masonry, and we trained them and developed them, and ultimately had a three-man, what we consider to be like a really high-end, productive, and a effective masonry crew. And so, this was probably 2025. It was almost 10 years ago. Our lead mason came to us and said that he really wanted to go out on his own. He had this vision, this dream of creating his own business. For us and for me, I did the same thing, to the person that I worked for prior to founding Mullin. And he was really supportive. So anytime somebody's come to us and been forthright about their plans and, asked for our support along the way, we've given it. So we gave it to Hoel. And, since then he's created, his own business that's, roughly 10 to 12, I think, employees. And they're capable of doing every bit as much custom work as we were, if not more at this point, as they've continued to become more sophisticated. But we've also learned that, these really like high-end capable masonry crews also aren't necessary on every job. And that's where we found that really we're actually like losing money when we measured a lot of it, Jeffrey. Something really simple like a paver patio. We're doing a project right now out along the riverfront. It's got thousands of square feet of paver pad or, dry set concrete pavers. And if we were doing that job in-house with the crew that we had, 8 or 9 years ago, like I can almost guarantee you either A, our bid wouldn't have been in the ballpark, we wouldn't have gotten the job, or B, if it would have been, we would have lost money on the job. But instead, we're able to outsource to a different contractor that's hyper productive. The quality is better than good enough. And so ultimately, right, it gets the job done more efficiently at a better value to the customer, which is, a lower cost than that really high end masonry contractor that's just unnecessary for a project like that.
Sounds like that would have been a job you would have lost your shirt on.
It would have been a bad job. I can almost, that would have been the kind of job that I would have hoped we didn't get, right? After the fact, if we would have lost it, we would have probably breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And that was it. Some of that too is just, right, like a different, as the business has grown and changed and gone through like, the evolutionary process that it's gone through, that's continuing to go through too. I think that, once again, like my experience might be different than somebody that always focuses on these really intimate, hyper custom backyard environments, right? That it may make more sense for them to control a couple of masons or not.
Yeah. Well, I like what you did a lot because it had also strategy behind it, right? You're trying to grow the maintenance division. So you maintain things that are growing, right? Softscape. And so you still do softscape in-house and you sub out the hardscape. And so, you're both letting go of things, but you're also doubling down on what you're really good at.
That's right. I think, again, just my opinion is that a lot of it has to do with the capacity of the business. And what I mean by capacity of the business, a lot of that is the capacity of the people, right? Like, how thinly spread is the leadership team, and right, like what kind of capacity does the business have to continue either A, offering that service that may not be fully aligned with what their vision is, or B, to like add an additional service. Like, and that's something that we really, we address regularly when we have opportunities. Is this something that we want to pursue, or is it something that's kind of distracting us from the overall mission and achieving the vision?
Really comes down to also what the owner, you said leadership team, but really, like, did the owner grow up doing that? Is that their core love?
Right.
You did not say, God, I love this so much personally.
I concur. And I mean, just to speak to residential, which I did have and I still do. I have a deep seated love for residential. I've also, unfortunately, it's like for every 10 great clients or every 100 great clients, maybe there's one really, really difficult client. And I think for us, unfortunately, that difficult client lingered in our memory longer, or those difficult clients. And so kind of same thing, right? Like as we talk about what we're deeply passionate about. For me, I'm deeply passionate about like what gives not only the customer the most value, but also the team the most value. And for us, we started to lose some value with that.
So, I mean, I get that you don't want to tell somebody else how to run their business, but based on your experience, when do you think somebody should think about, adding that service versus dropping that service?
Yeah, I think so. To me, it's fun. I'll mention one that we've talked about recently is hydroseeding. At one point, we did hydroseed in house. We no longer hydroseed in house. We use a network of subcontractors for hydroseeding. They're not always easy to deal with, but I think some of that's just the nature of the machinery they use, et cetera. So, like as we've measured that recently, it's kind of what's a big part of it is a math equation, right? Does it make more sense to bring it in house? Like what's kind of like the dollar to time ratio? And at a certain point, I think it may be like, hey, we're either not necessarily overpaying, but we're giving away X amount of margin, and that margin turns into really big dollars. I think for us, it makes us think much harder on, does it make sense to allow them to make that margin, or is it something that we should bring in house, particularly if we think this isn't just like a one-time thing, right? If we think this is going to be kind of a perpetual cycle. And then I guess on the opposite end of things, once again, like for us with masonry, for instance, it made it kind of an easy decision where we had our lead mason tell us more or less, right, that, ask us to support him going out on his own. As we kind of walk through some different unit costs and other things with him, more or less like on his way out as he was setting up his business and his pricing model, we determined that, hey, even though we are going to let go some of this margin that we had, it makes sense from just a cost control standpoint. And that was something that we found with, particularly masonry, that the cost could really vary pretty wildly. So we like the fact that at this point we get a fixed cost on the front end. Even if they have to price it high for some really custom stuff, we still know that, we're marking up, whatever percentage of markup we put on top of that price, and, we're going to make it, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to have to worry about going over labor hour budget.
It's like that book. Oh, sorry, a little bit. I think you have to turn down your volume a little bit.
Oh,
there, that's better. It's like the book Good to Great, right? The hedgehog concept. And
correct.
You guys, what your hedgehog is.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk. I don't know if we want to jump into it yet, but because you brought that up, that Good to Great and the hedgehog concept was a really big, like, major driving force in our decision to shut down residential. That's exactly it, right? We're looking at, like, what are we best at? What brings the most value to the business? Where do we give the most value to the customer, et cetera? That was funny. We looked at a lot of hedgehog, or presented a lot of hedgehog graphics, and talked a lot. We had shirts be the hedgehog, like that was our thematic goal for a year. And as we kind of made the transition, wrapped our heads around it.
So there's a good number of contractors that will do residential design build and commercial maintenance. That
Mhm.
used to be you, I guess. And
Correct.
then you decided, nah, that's not strategic enough. Tell us how you made that decision.
So it was a couple things. A, when we really opened up the hood of residential, um, the way we run a divisional P&L, it doesn't capture um, all the time that indirect or G&A people are spending on a certain division. So if there's something like, let's just say residential, design, build, maintenance, both sucked a lot of time. If there's something like residential that's sucking a lot of time from marketing or sucking a lot of time from, let's say, like construction department leadership, that's not going to be measurable on that P&L, right? They're just getting their allocation as a percent of revenue, and so it makes it optically, it made residential for us look better than it really was. But once we opened up the hood and really started interviewing people and having them track time and then circling back to them and how much time, what percentage of your time have you really spent, et cetera, we learned that we were spending a lot of unmeasured time, managing this residential department. And so then we had to look at the team and say, hey, what kind of team do we have? Where do we want to allocate our people? Right? Does it, do we want to try to hire X number of, additional superintendents or crew members as we continue to grow commercial to keep this residential? Or does it make more sense to move these people over to commercial and just kind of eliminate the, I hate to call it headache, but for us, eliminate the headache of residential? And you know, I, it was not a move that we've made lightly. We, built a foundation of the business really on residential design build. So it was a huge decision and one that we spent, probably 2 years agonizing over. Now that it's been, I guess, right under a year, 10 days shy of a year. It was January 6th of 2025. We made it official. I can say we have not had a single regret.
Can you give us some numbers from both of those decisions? We cut away X dollars, but we've grown back Y dollars.
Yeah. So we did, in 2024, we did, want to tell you it was $5.2 million roughly in residential. That's maintenance, enhancements, and design build. We sold our maintenance book. That that sale was finalized. I guess like technically, I think it was January 6th of 2024. And then we shut down our residential design department. We kept one person to kind of finish out the jobs that we had in queue, which we still have a couple of those larger jobs, like almost almost closed out. So we saw, we still saw about $1 million in residential revenue in 2025, just as that carryover. But we went from, roughly a $24 million company in 2024, slightly over 5 million of that residential. We'll fall just short of 30 million in 2025 without that, without 4 million of that residential. So significant. We had a lot of that work already in the pipeline, obviously. Like that increase in revenue didn't, we didn't go out and win it all on January the 7th, 2025, but still it gave us the capacity from a labor standpoint, a management standpoint to do that additional work.
So you dropped 5 and picked up 10?
Basically, yes.
That's a smart decision.
It worked out pretty well. Yeah.
What made that work so well? Because that's really what what caught my attention was, the pruning of the vine in order to grow what you're trying to grow.
Yeah, and I would be like misinforming you if I said that it was 100% strategic. I mean, that'd sound great for the podcast, but there was some just kind of dumb luck in there. We we're wrapping up the largest commercial construction job we've ever performed. So that job came into the fold, I guess, like around the time that we were officially shutting down residential. We hadn't won that job yet, but we knew it was there. That didn't play into the decision to eliminate residential, but still, that it was $3 million chunk of revenue. And then just some strategic like maintenance moves. We had built a business development team instead of just a single business developer. And, we knew that eliminating residential, we would have to have kind of more horsepower chasing commercial work. And once again, we knew that, with the elimination of this residential maintenance work, we'd have more bandwidth from a management and labor standpoint. So I guess there was a fair amount of strategy in there, right? But still, some of these things, you know, they happen to just work, right? Where, a
I
handful of
mean,
big jobs and large maintenance contracts.
if you chew on it for 2 years, there better be some strategy that comes out
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. I mean, and it's almost like any sales, right? Like there's a lot of strategy behind sales, but at the same time, particularly when it's a big job, like there's a little drop of luck that you found out about it or that they really liked you or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for sure.
we did not, I guess, to kind of reemphasize, like we didn't go in to 2025 initially budgeting to do as much revenue as we did. There's a handful of construction windfall jobs in particular that really helped make that $10 million.
And all the softscapes in house and all the hardscapes subbed.
Yeah, it
So
makes it correct. And again, makes it easier, as we talk about going back to the hardscapes subbed out, like that's labor, on any given day, we probably have between, I don't know, 5 and 15 individuals working for subcontractors on our projects. Certainly their days was zero, but average is somewhere between 5 and 15. So that's labor that we're not having to manage, right? We're not having to find them, train them, retain them, get them to and from job sites, keep them safe. Well, we do have some safety responsibility, but you
yeah.
get the gist.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally get it. I mean, when you did my front yard, you subbed out the concrete work, right?
Mhm.
And it was great.
Yeah, I was going to say, and they're experts at concrete, right? They're not planting plants when they're running out of concrete work. They're just doing concrete work.
Right.
I
Actually,
think
that
there's I
gives,
think there's a lot of benefit in that too.
there's a lot of comfort in that when you understand it.
Yes.
So let's touch on a couple more things here. I think you were telling me that, I mean, you've been growing a lot, right? And at some point, you decided to dive into your systems. You didn't tell me why, but clearly, when you grow that much, you outgrow your systems. And you were talking about even your software, Aspire. And like, tell me what got into your head that you're like, I need to dive into this to see how well we're using our systems.
Yeah. Good question. Hope you like my long answers. That's the kind of answer I'm best at providing. So I'll share this. Like, I'm a visionary leader. As a founder, I've also had to be very tactical as well, right? Particularly like, bootstrapping and starting from nothing. But ultimately, like I'm much more comfortable in the visionary role and I'm more comfortable flying at, I don't know, 20 or 30,000 feet than I am like walking through the weeds. Um, and we talked about this for a couple minutes briefly before the podcast, but there's the whole like letting go of the vine concept. And I've talked about this pretty often when I've been interviewed or, even just talking to different, fellow landscapers, peers at industry events that I feel like I've always, for the most part, been pretty good at empowering leaders and like identifying talent. And I'd like to think like developing the talent and et cetera. 2025 in some ways was a great year for Mullin. In other ways was like a really challenging year, both for the business and for myself, because I've learned a lot, getting a little deeper here on air, Jeffrey, that I did off air. I've learned a lot as a CEO, I believe, about what I need to inspect, right? And kind of the whole trust but verify
Yeah.
concept. And there were a number of things in the business, like let's say, like as you talked about, related to Aspire, that I really thought were happening on a process standpoint. And I thought our Aspire health was much better than it was. When we started seeing just some like inaccuracy in the P&Ls and kind of some other things that smelled a little bit funny. A small team of us went and started kind of digging around in Aspire and learned that there were a lot of things that were not right. And it's kind of, I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, but maybe almost like a domino effect of sorts, but it's like once we found one thing, we'd move along, we'd find another thing and then another thing. And so we're, I guess, about 6 months in and almost finished for the most part with like a really major Aspire cleanup effort. And, it is tough. And we've been on Aspire. We're one of the not original users, but we've been on Aspire since I think 2017, maybe. So we've been on the software for a long time. Uh, and I think as tough as it was to see just like how, I guess, unhealthy, right? Some of what we were doing was how many of these processes had fallen to the side, new people have been brought on and trained improperly, et cetera. As tough as it was to see that, I think it is also like just a lesson this far into the software of kind of what to focus on, right? And I think that it's like every house at some point needs to be like have stuff pulled out and put, really clean thoroughly and put back in. And so that's what we've spent quite a bit of time doing. And like I said, we're pretty close to finish at this point, but then obviously it's setting up everything to keep it right on the go forward and having some better just systems to ensure that it doesn't get to the
God, there's so much we could unpack here,
Yeah.
I have 2 clients that I'm working with closely that have continuous improvement managers or directors, whatever the title is. And in part, their job is to dig into really throughout the whole company and measure if things are going as they're supposed to. And, there's, we're not going to have that podcast here, but they really help make sure systems are being operated properly. In your case, though, it's almost like you re-onboarded the whole software. Like, how deep did you go?
Almost like we re-onboarded the whole software. Pretty deep. That's a good way to say it.
That's
and a lot of it was on the maintenance end. We've grown. I wish I could think of what our maintenance book was 5 years ago, but let me try to think of this. I don't know. We've grown whatever, probably 5x, if not more, in 5 years on the commercial maintenance end. So in some ways it makes sense, right? Where it's like this exponential growth and it's how do you keep up with the growth? And I think, what we had is we had people just kind of tucking things, sweeping them under the rug because they didn't have time to, right, like fix them the correct way. But yeah, it's funny because oftentimes I listen to people on podcasts and I love CEO talk where I'm like, everything is great. And, we went from 24 million to 30 million and yada, yada. But I think that like the reality of things is like, things aren't always great. And part of it though, is just, like not giving up and figuring out how to make them better. Right. And like really like rallying the team and leading from the front and getting them like behind me or behind the CEO. To align and get things better. And it's crazy. I literally every day think about how fortunate I am to be surrounded by all the people at Mullin, but particularly like the small senior leadership team we have, because I think that we're all just like completely aligned on getting everything fixed. And so there's a ton of just like hope and optimism and excitement, I think, when everybody is like-minded and kind of rallying around the same mission.
Let me ask you what might be a cynical question. You think if people are saying, man, things are just going great, we're just growing so smoothly, do you think they're not inspecting what they should be?
I don't know. I think that sometimes, no. I think they may. There's probably a little luck in that too, right? Like, and it's not all, again, just a drop of luck like the sales. I think they probably have the right team. They probably have tenure in the team. They probably trust the team. There's probably, if they say things are super smooth, there's probably a couple things they're missing, is my guess. Yeah. But it's hard to say how big those things are, right?
I have clients where somebody will go on vacation and they'll just by luck step into that person's role, not by plan. And they're like, oh my God, so many things are not working in this department that I thought were working. And I really think as a leader, you should plan for that. You should know when people are going on vacation and just spend time in another department.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
disagree with that.
does it work? Are the systems in the team operating that the department head put in place the way they're supposed to? Now, I don't want to, that could come off, I don't know, like micromanaging, or I don't know, I don't mean it from the distrusting your team. It's just, hey, is it what you think it is? And
Right.
go experience yourself.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Where it becomes difficult, particularly as you get to a certain size, and there are these senior leaders that are, really expect a high level of autonomy. I think it becomes a little bit of like a delicate line on where to kind of exert my dominance or our dominance as leaders. Right, and kind of hone in and open up the hood, so to speak, of what they're doing, versus just giving them so much autonomy that we might be unpleasantly surprised at some point right along the way because we're not checking what they're doing.
You were telling me offline about a department. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Say that again.
You were talking offline about some department where you thought you gave too much vine.
Yeah, that was really like at Mullin. It was our maintenance department. Just gave too much, and with the amount of growth that we had, and we've hired a lot of people over the last several years to accommodate the growth. We've had some turnover as we've exited residential and changed the business a bit, and just didn't pay enough attention to making sure that it was architected the right way.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm still thinking about the Aspire discussion. I would think, so you started in 2017, what, 8 years ago? I would think not only could things get, I don't know, crusty or underused in your own company, whatever, however you describe it, but also the software has grown so much that there could easily be so many things that you're not really have onboarded and integrated.
That's exactly right. And I've seen you were talking about like your couple of clients who've got these, what are they called? Not innovation officers.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah, so kind of innovation, continuous improvement people. I think the same. I've seen a number of businesses who've got, designated Aspire super users and people whose sole responsibility, whether it's one person or a number, a team of people who are responsible for Aspire. And I can absolutely see like the benefit at that point in this. And that's where I think right, disconnection, the way Mullin's design say, where we've got multiple divisions and the kind of disconnection between divisions, the way it was working was enough to allow a lot of things to kind of come unraveled a bit.
So you've grown quite a bit since I met you the first time and over the years. And I imagine and you were touching on this a little bit, that your understanding of your role and your actual role as CEO has evolved and changed. And you told me offline that you got some help with that. You want to speak to how you keep yourself sharp in this role?
Great question. I would, I think that my best answer right now would be to tell you that I'm a member of YPO, if you want to air that or not, but so I sit monthly with a forum of 7 other presidents, CEOs.
Yeah.
So to have that like camaraderie is invaluable. And then I read and I do other things, listen to podcasts, etc. It's funny that you asked that question. I mentioned to my wife, I don't know, maybe Christmas Eve, we were driving, and I mentioned to her that I think that I'm like ready to hire an executive coach, like specifically for myself, a CEO coach, because I do think that it's tough, Jeffrey. Like it's just somewhat of a unique role. In some ways I'm like really surrounded and entrenched with the team, and in other ways I'm like somewhat like outcasted from the team. And I think that that's probably normal. But again, I can't sit across the table from I can actually, but I was gonna say from my COO and say, what do I do better? But I think that's really where a coach comes in, right? Is coach who's been there and done that, understands the role and says, hey, pay more attention to this, stop doing that, etc. Could be really important as it relates like specifically to me.
Yeah. Also, the coach aligns with your objectives, helps you clarify them, understands them. And then they can say, what the heck are you doing over there?
Right.
Let's go after these.
That 100%. That's exactly. And I think once again, like visionary leaders, we like to go over there sometimes, right? That's kind of in our DNA or in our nature. So I think to have somebody that can kind of pull us back on track can also be a really good.
Yeah. Does your wife act like that at all?
Uh, Not really. No, she's pretty. It's interesting. So we've got. I may have told you this, but we've got 4 kids. We've got 10, 8, and then 2 and 1. And so the two babies, having doubling the size like the business, Jeffrey. We just keep growing. No, like doubling, going from 2 kids to 4 kids. Like she is very busy with home.
Wait. What, was this all organic, or were there any acquisitions?
This is all organic. It's all.
Okay.
I can say this on air, I guess. I called the 2-year-old our unplanned gift from God, and so he was our 3rd boy, and so we figured we'd try for a girl, and it worked. So it's number 4. But
God bless you.
she's really busy at home, and she's interested enough to I guess like kind of respect me and respect the business, but she's not super into the details at this point. She's got
She's got
of
her own
other
business
details
going
that
there, it
she's
sounds
paying
like.
attention to.
I'm sorry?
I said she's got a lot of other details outside of the business that she's required to pay attention to.
It sounds like she's running 4 divisions there.
Something like that. Yeah, 4 very challenging divisions.
So what's the future for Mullin? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so we we really want to continue, and it's interesting, like with the high-end residential background, we're making a really big push to really make sure that we're working for, the ideal customer for us, which is somebody that like really values their landscaping, and that we can, not only do they value us and their landscaping, but also somebody that we can give value to, right? If their highest priority is low bid, which certainly I respect if that's their priority, we're probably not, the right contractor for them. So we've spent some time too this year, like evaluating our book of business and also evaluating just like our sales strategy and prospects, and trying to ensure that, we're really like aligning with our clients in terms of like value creation. And we do. So we want to, we really want to be like in the markets that we're in, we want to be like the absolute, best value contractor, right? Of people who are looking for the whole package. And so we see that, we see continued growth, really in smaller markets right now. Like we've done really well in Baton Rouge. We're in Lafayette. We're looking at coastal Mississippi. So, we kind of like those B class markets, I suppose, where we're not, not going to a Houston or something and fighting against, 5 or 10 really capable contractors, where we're maybe staying a little bit closer to home, smaller market, less prospects, but also we're maybe bringing something to that market that they haven't seen before.
Would you also say it's easier to staff up in that market?
I would say perhaps. So I don't, again, having not been in like a Houston, I can't speak to like staffing somewhere like that.
Yeah.
I can say that obviously, right, there's like less, particularly, I will say that, like, as we go to a market like let's say a Lafayette, and we're offering, kind of best in class benefits and training and some other different things that, is kind of a medium to larger size business we can offer. I would think that it kind of separates us, right, from perhaps like some of the existing employers.
Yeah. So less competition also means less competition for the employees?
Correct. Yeah, and less, right, like kind of less sophisticated competition, if that makes sense. Where
Yeah.
once again, they might not have PTO and 401k and all the other benefits that somebody like Mullin would offer.
So how many branches are you now?
So we're 3 branches, looking at a 4th.
Okay. Hey, I have a podcast for you.
Go ahead. I'm
I know
ready.
you like podcasts. I'm going to pull it up here. Give me 2 seconds. I have to pull it up on my phone. So have you ever listened to Odd Lots?
Yeah.
Odd Lots is Bloomberg, and it's just odd. Like everyone is different. And so they had a podcast 2 weeks ago called Meat Eaters.
Meat eaters?
Stephen Ranella on the economic history of hunting. And it was fascinating. And you being a hunter and a
I was
fisherman,
going
I
to say,
thought,
I like hunting, so I'm sure I'll enjoy the podcast.
yeah, I'll text it over to you. It was really fascinating.
Awesome. Yeah. I
So,
appreciate
Chase,
that.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, as always, I always enjoy our conversations, both on air and off air. So I appreciate the invitation, the opportunity to connect.
Yeah, you betcha, man.